Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mark Anderson and I will be moderating today's session. Before we get started, I would just like to go through a few housekeeping items. Because we have a large number of attendees today, all phones will be muted for the duration of the webinar. There will be a time for Q&A at the end, so if you have questions you would like us to address, please type them in the chat box shown in the diagram. The webinar should last approximately 45 minutes, with 15 minutes saved for questions. The purpose of today's session is to explore what's possible with PDRI. Most people on the call today will have some experience using PDRI to reduce risk in front-end planning already. We look forward to highlighting how you can get more from PDRI and to introducing some leading research that will help organizations derive powerful insights to improve front-end planning. Our presenters today include Dr. Mahdi Safa and Sandra MacGillivray. Mahdi is a Post-Doctoral Fellow in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Waterloo. He has been heavily involved in a number of CII research teams, and his academic research has focused on construction management best practices, with numerous articles published in the area. Today, he will be sharing his most recent research on building and applying mathematical models to analyze historical PDRI data and build leading indicators of cost, schedule, safety, and more. Sandra MacGillivray is a certified PDRI facilitator, project management professional, and a past research team member with the Construction Industry Institute on front-end planning, risk management, and portfolio management. She started Valency with the goal of helping organizations maximize the value they get from CII best practices. So to get things started, I would like to pass things over to Sandra. Sandra?
Thank you very much, Mark. I'd like to thank everyone for joining here today. And to kick things off, I'd like to share our objectives for this webinar on getting the most out of PDRI. If you consider your organization's implementation of PDRI, I'd encourage you to think about what the impact would be if you could, first of all, increase the adoption rate and consistency in how PDRI is used. Secondly, if you could easily identify opportunities for continuous improvement in front-end planning and even measure the impact. And finally, what would the impact be if you could provide guidance on cost and schedule performance ranges based on PDRI scores? We trust that today's webinar will introduce some implementation strategies to consider where there's an opportunity to get even more out of the investment you've made in PDRI. It's been our experience that most organizations using PDRI have achieved a great deal. We hear stories every day about how you're seeing cost and schedule reductions, reduced project risk, and increased team alignment. But now industry leaders like yourselves are starting to ask some great questions. And the first question, we gather so much data with PDRI. Is there more we could be doing with it, like building internal portfolio benchmarks, or identifying continuous improvement opportunities, and leveraging leading indicators for cost, schedule, or safety performance? And secondly, can we make PDRI more fit for business, for our industry segment, for our corporate culture, and for the regulatory and permitting requirements that we face? These are both great questions, and the answer to both is yes. And through our work here at Valency, we'd like to share how we're helping clients to achieve this. We recognize that there's some challenges to address before we can answer these key questions. And the most common concerns that arise are, how can we get there when all of our PDRI data is in spreadsheets? The second being, we do benchmark cost, and schedule, and safety outcomes, but we're never correlating that to front-end planning so far. And fit for what purpose exactly? For those on the call, we know that many of you are supporting multiple business units that span many geographies, and ideally, PDRI would be customized to address the uniquenesses of each of those. From our experience, we see tremendous value to be gained by continuing down a total solutions path and taking PDRI wider into your organization and focusing where there's opportunities to maximize the value it brings to all project stakeholders. Taking PDRI deeper into your organization and making the content fit for purpose. Taking PDRI higher by supporting portfolio management and continuous improvement. And finally, taking the long view and looking at how PDRI can help accomplish strategic objectives with performance insights. The benefits of considering these 4 dimensions in your PDRI implementation strategy include increased cost savings across every project that you touch, being able to reduce risk across an entire portfolio with that increased rigor and risk management during front-end planning, and increasing the effectiveness of your capital program by increasing the alignment to your strategic objectives. Let's start to unpack this model by focusing on taking PDRI wide. If we step back and focus on how to maximize the value of PDRI for all of our project stakeholders, it starts with some key considerations. We look at the consistency with which we facilitate and prepare our reports. We look at the communication of actionable results from every session, and we include comparisons to relevant benchmarks. Valency has addressed each of these considerations in our Carve application. Carve is a simple and visual application that makes PDRI engaging for all project stakeholders. We're going to transition now to a live demonstration of Carve. Carve's project dashboard is designed to easily communicate the risk of each project that's in the front-end planning stage and increase the reach of PDRI across your organization. As an example, let's walk through this industrial portfolio from the perspective of a project director. Our project director was informed today that the expansion of off-grid power generation project has deferred their gate review to the first week of January. He's not pleased, as it's a key project in his expansion program, but he was told there were good reasons. He needs confidence that his project team has an action plan to address the risk areas they've found and won't miss their next rescheduled gate review. From the dashboard, a project director sees that the project recently conducted their PDRI 3 on November 11th, and it's listed as being high risk as displayed in red. He clicks on the project to drill down and see the PDRI details. Using the PDRI assessment summary, our project director can get more details on the PDRI session. He sees that the project is trending above the industry recommended range for projects at this stage, and it's also trending above the company's portfolio average for projects at authorization. Next, he reads through the summary prepared by the facilitator. This draws his attention quickly to a low level of definition that was found in the process and mechanical scope. He wants to drill down and understand that better. So at the bottom of the assessment summary is our basis of design, and he can see that it represents the majority of the risk that's outstanding. He clicks to drill down and better understand. Sure enough, of the categories within basis of design, the process and mechanical holds the most amount of remaining risk. So the next question on our project director's mind is, what is the team doing to address these gaps? Our project director clicks on the Action Items tab. The number 1 action item that's listed is to address definition of mechanical equipment list, equipment status, and the equipment location drawings. So that's a clear next step. But how did our planning process fall down? He takes note of the elements that are listed in the action item and moves over to the low definition elements. The highest risk that's listed is in fact the mechanical equipment list. Now our project director doesn't use PDRI every day, so a refresh on this element would be very helpful. In one click, he pulls up the full description of what mechanical equipment list expectations are. From the comments captured during the PDRI session, he can see that the team had planned to defer definition of the mechanical equipment list to the detailed design phase. But that's not how projects are done here. Another big opportunity to maximize the value of PDRI is addressing the demands of senior stakeholders. Your executive team, your board of directors, or investors often demand a clearer understanding of project risk prior to authorization. PDRI is one of the most comprehensive risk management tools available for front-end planning. So if we can better communicate PDRI results in an executive-style report to this audience, we can effectively address that demand. Carve makes it a one-step process to be able to create that executive-style report. For our current PDRI 3 assessment, we simply click on the print option and a PDF report is generated and downloaded. Let's take a look at that report. You'll see the same information in our PDF that was presented in the online summary, but it's presented in a manner that can easily share the results of the executive summary, the action items, attendees, and low-definition elements in a manner that reflects how this group of users consumes information. Continuing on, let's walk through some key considerations in taking PDRI deeper into your organization. PDRI users often encounter resistance when it comes to achieving widespread buy-in for the methodology until they start to address customization of the element descriptions and making PDRI fit for purpose to their organization. The most common requests that we've encountered include business unit considerations. As an example, in the oil and gas industry, element requirements can vary significantly between upstream and refining business units. Corporate policies and procedures are another key consideration. Gate deliverables. CII's front-end planning community of practice is currently tackling better definition of gate deliverables so that they could be incorporated into PDRI element descriptions. Regulatory requirements are another big area. And this fall, we collaborated with CII's Federal Facilities Community of Practice on the building's PDRI elements. The main focus of that discussion was on what impact a mandate to reduce the federal footprint had on their element descriptions. Industry terminology, and finally, language translation. This fall, we facilitated a series of PDRIs for a French client entirely in French. The same principle can be applied for Spanish or Portuguese or any other language in which PDRI is being held. In introducing our approach to fit for purpose, there are a few key considerations. You'll want to start with the most applicable CII PDRI template. You'll need to identify the name and description customizations that you want to make at the section, category, or element level. And you always want to keep in mind that you need to avoid changing the original intent of any of the elements. The combined result provides you with your fit-for-purpose PDRI template. Using Carve, this customization process is auditable and done with administrative security levels. I'd like to make an important note here. We do not recommend modifying the element weightings within a PDRI template. One of the greatest strengths of PDRI is the years of research and benchmarking that have gone into the development of the methodology, and we don't want to compromise that value. Let's walk through how a PDRI administrator using Carve can take advantage of this fit-for-purpose functionality. Under the Admin tab, we have the ability to manage PDRI templates specifically for your organization's use. The first template that we see in the list has a dark pencil on the right-hand side. This indicates that a customization has been made to the template name. When we edit the template name, we see that the master was called PDRI Industrial version 3.8. We've customized it for our power generation business unit, and as such have renamed it the Power Generation PDRI Industrial template. Drilling down into the template displays the three sections: Section 1, Basis of Project Decision, has a gray pencil. This indicates that a customization has been made at a lower level within the template. Drilling down to the category level, we see our customization in the name for Category 1. If we open that, again, we can see that we've taken industry terminology to make it more fit for purpose by focusing on power generation objectives rather than the standard manufacturing objectives criteria. If we go down to Category D, Project Scope, we'll start to find our first element that has been customized. D6, Project Schedule, has a few customizations we'd like to walk you through. As you see on the left-hand side, we have the master name and the master description for every element. Customizations can be made to the name or to the description. In this particular element, we've incorporated a few things. First, instead of the generic project milestone schedule, we've highlighted some specific gate deliverables and that we expect our project teams to deliver a minimum of a Level 3 project schedule. Second, we've incorporated some specific policies and procedures along with hyperlinks to the project closeout and post-implementation review procedures. Once your customizations are complete, you'll probably want a document that you can distribute in your PDRI session for attendees that reflects that fit-for-purpose template. Selecting the print option at the top of the template gives you that document in one simple click. Let's take a quick look at that report. Here we have our power generation element description list. It's 37 pages and includes every element with a combination of the master elements and the ones that we've customized. If we want to find our project schedule element that we've customized, we can quickly move to that and we see all the elements above and below reflect the master, and our modifications are easily included in that report, including our hyperlinks to go to any linked documents. To summarize this section, taking PDRI deeper into your organization with a fit-for-purpose PDRI template is a powerful consideration for your implementation strategy. Feedback from our clients is that these are key steps that will help increase the adoption rate of PDRI, increases the consistency and how PDRI sessions are facilitated, and it helps in capturing lessons learned from your experienced facilitators and ensure that becomes part of the knowledge base that's shared across your implementation team. Next, let's consider how to better support portfolio management and continuous improvement. If your organization manages capital spending at a program or a portfolio level, you can support these managers with increased insight into portfolio level risk of projects in front-end planning. By aggregating PDRI results at a portfolio level, we gain some new insights, including risk monitoring based on the aggregate profile of the projects at each gate in your front-end planning process. It gives us an ability to classify projects based on risk, in particular as they move from front-end planning into execution. And we also get the ability to identify opportunities for continuous improvement in front-end planning. Let's take a walk through how Carve supports a portfolio manager with each of these insights. Under our Portfolio tab, our portfolio manager has the ability to monitor the risk profile of each portfolio by stage gate. For his building projects, our portfolio manager can see that projects late in the front-end planning stages are trending well, as displayed in green. He is concerned about the projects early in front-end planning displayed in red. However, when he hovers over the red bar, he can see the first stage is just one project included in the average. Our portfolio manager is more concerned about understanding the risk profile of projects at PDRI 3 that will proceed shortly into an authorization stage. he easily drills down to take a look at the projects that make up that portfolio. Using the project distribution chart, our portfolio manager easily identifies one high-risk project preparing for authorization. He can see its PDRI score is outside of our recommended range, and it's trending significantly above the portfolio average. Our portfolio manager uses this information to focus his attention on the one outlier, the Art Center basement renovation. With one more click, the portfolio manager has full access to that assessment summary. He easily proceeds to the action items list to understand what the team is doing to address the risks that are outstanding. Finally, Carve's ability to aggregate PDRI data at the portfolio level provides us with information for those responsible for your Center of Excellence or continuous improvement, with a very comprehensive list of areas for improvement in front-end planning. Using the Low Definition Elements tab, we can see each portfolio's opportunities for improvement. For our buildings portfolio, we've selected PDRI 3, and we can see the low definition elements that consistently pose risk to successful project execution. Now, consistent as you've seen in Carve already, many team members that we're trying to reach won't use PDRI every day. And even though future expansion considerations is scoring high, your team may need a refresher to see exactly what the expectations are of this particular element. The final dimension we'd like to walk through today is taking the long view on PDRI. I was first introduced to this tool set in 2010 while working on a CII front-end planning team, and I saw so much potential if we could just figure out how to leverage the breadth of assessment data that's collected during front-end planning. Our first release of the Carve application was a real turning point of making this a reality. For the first time, we had a tool set that could normalize PDRI data and give us access to that category and element level data. Early in 2014, Valency kicked off a research project with the University of Waterloo to better understand how PDRI data could now be used to help develop leading indicators of project performance. A key outcome from that research has been the PDRI Performance Insight Model. It starts with identifying the performance insights that are needed or the essential questions we want to answer. With those insights identified, we can then start to identify the data that's needed to investigate. Next, we consider the analytical model that's best suited for that investigation. And with results in hand, we carefully consider the intended audience for that performance insight. And this dictates the best method of delivery of those findings. And finally, our Carve application serves as the platform to access the tremendous value of PDRI data. Today, we're going to share a case study that reflects the work we've done with an industry partner on this research. It is a CII member company that's predominantly working with an industrial capital spending program. I'd like to hand the meeting over to our primary researcher on this, Dr. Mahdi Safa, to share his findings. Mahdi is very familiar with CII best practices. He's been involved in Research Team 252 on construction productivity in support of Professor Carl Haas. He's co-author of 4 papers related to that research. And in 2013, he received a grad student scholarship for the CII annual conference. Mahdi?
Thank you, Sandra. In this research project, we are interested in investigating what parts of front-end planning have more influence of project performance. We try to analyze the relation between PDRI scores in different levels and project performance. We also try to investigate the effectiveness of using PDRI in forecasting project performance in terms of cost and time overrun. The first question in this study is, can we consider the PDRI scores as influential and leading indicators of overall project performance? If yes, how can we use these scores to estimate project performance elements? It's obvious the data is the key input for our analysis. This table shows the data we received from the first phase of our research project. We have PDRI score for 59 projects with their associated documents. We also have the cost performance data for 15 projects and schedule performance data for 12 projects. We expect to receive the cost and schedule performance for 30 more projects by mid of December to complete second phase of our analysis. The cost and schedule data required for this type of analysis is normally straightforward to collect from a client's ERP system. However, we also need PDRI data for analysis. Historically, PDRI data has been largely unstructured data, and we are dealing with a large data set for this type of analysis. To overcome this challenge, we use Carve to normalize our PDRI data based on our specific analytical requirements. Carve allows us to generate an export file including PDRI section, category, and element data. This becomes our input data for SPSS, MATLAB, or any other statistical tool we may use for analysis. We use these formulas to calculate the schedule and cost performance by comparing the planned and actual value of cost and schedule for each project. The performance factor is used here to measure the actual project cost and duration as a percentage of the planned value. Here are the three types of analysis we have conducted in this study related to the cost and schedule performance. Performance analysis for a project with PDRI scores above and below 200. We will share this result shortly. Regression analysis of performance versus PDRI score. And finally, identifying influential factor on project performance. We believe this is a first research project to conduct this type of analysis using PDRI data. Until now, it was very difficult to investigate category and element level correlation to performance. We conducted the statistical analysis between these two groups, a PDRI score over 200 and under 200, to find if there is a significant difference in the schedule performance. Based on our analysis, the average schedule performance for project with a score under 200 is 8% over plan, and for project with a score over 200 is approximately 23% over plan. The other analysis we did was identifying and highlighting the influential factors that have the greatest effect on project duration. The prediction of these potential indicators was based on the use of a multiple regression analysis technique that relies on a dependent variable, which is schedule performance, and independent variables, including scores of each PDRI category. We had a meeting with the Valency client to gain their expert opinion and validate the result of this analysis. They agreed with the side information having a big impact on schedule variances. These meetings were also an important opportunity to influence the interpretation of our research results. We also performed the same statistical analysis between these two groups, under 200 and over 200, for project cost certainty. Based on our analysis for this client, the average cost performance for a project with a score under 200 is minus 3.6% to plan, and for a project with a score greater than 200 is minus 27% to plan. During our discussion of these results with the client, it quickly led to a discussion on their practices for assigning project contingency based on level of definition at authorization. It is important to note that in our phase 1 analysis, only 2 projects fell into the greater than 200 group. Phase 2, with 40 to 50 projects included in this same analysis, should provide greater clarity on whether this is a consistent trend. We also try to find influential factor for project cost. The prediction of these potential indicators again was based on the use of multiple regression analysis technique. Our dependent variable was cost performance and independent variables including a score of each PDRI categories. We plan to continue our statistical analysis in phase 2 of this study with more data and other statistical techniques. Again, our client agreed that document-based deliverables have historically been a challenge.
Thank you, Mahdi. As with any successful research project, we have a journal article that will be submitted in January, as well as multiple conference papers that we look forward to sharing with the CII community. But today we'd like to focus more on how our client is applying the performance insights gained from this research. From a high level, the research has provided the client with a validation of the investment they've made in the PDRI process. It's increased their confidence in their implementation strategy, and these results will be shared with their project governance board. More importantly, the indications of significant schedule and cost performance improvements for projects authorized on scores less than 200 have led to inclusion of additional business units in phase 2 of this research. With more project data in phase 2, we will validate through regression analysis their optimal PDRI authorization range, which may be a value less than 200. The biggest contribution to the PDRI body of knowledge from this research project is the ability to identify those influential factors that drive cost and schedule performance. With this insight, our client is already working through improvements for their front-end planning process, including training opportunities to provide project teams with the ability to identify and plan for document-based deliverables for their brownfield projects. They're incorporating increased focus on site information and deliverables in their facilitation process. And going forward, as they encounter projects that score over 200 or have low definition on those influential factors, they will use the research results to highlight the impact that it has had historically on their project performance. To summarize and recap on the questions that we started with today, I'd like to go back to our original questions. We gather so much data with PDRI. Is there more that we can do with it? I hope that we've given you some very interesting ideas on how we build internal portfolio benchmarks, how we can identify continuous improvement opportunities, and leverage that data to build leading indicators of cost and schedule. Carve can be an important part of helping achieve that, along with our PDRI performance insight model. Secondly, can we make PDRI more fit for purpose to our industry, to our corporate culture, and for regulatory and permitting requirements? And the answer again is yes, using our Carve application. There is tremendous value to be gained by continuing down a total solutions path and taking PDRI wider into your organization and engaging all of your project stakeholders, by taking it deeper and making PDRI content more fit for purpose to your organization, taking it higher to support portfolio management and continuous improvement, and finally taking the long view and accomplishing strategic objectives with front-end planning and performance insights. As we end the prepared part of today's webinar, I'd like to focus on 3 takeaway questions to consider. The first is, if PDRI were more fit for purpose, would your adoption increase in your organization? The second is what business units have sufficient historical data to analyze PDRI's impact on your project performance? And the third, would your capital program benefit from a more effective risk management in front-end planning? If your organization is interested in getting more from your existing investment in PDRI, Valency is here to help. First, please consider conducting a pilot of our Carve application. It's simple and straightforward to get started. Second, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to start a one-on-one conversation on your specific objectives. And finally, we'll be following up this webinar with an email and link to the recorded session within the next few days. Mark, I'll hand the webinar back to you.
Thanks very much, Sandra. We hope that the session has been helpful to everyone. We have introduced a number of concepts today that will help you get the most out of your implementation of PDRI. If you'd like to unpack these concepts in more detail, we will be covering these as part of our broader interactive workshops on effective front-end planning throughout the first half of 2015. Please watch for our email with more registration details in early January. So without further ado, it's question and answer time. So I do have a number of questions that have come in. The first question, how does your application normalize PDRI scores based on applicability to projects? For example, the basement renovation with no structural versus the new science building, greenfield build-out. How can you compare the two when many of the PDRI elements do not apply?
Sure, that's a great question, Mark. So I guess the first part of it is all of the data that is imported from a PDRI spreadsheet or that's entered directly into Carve is stored in a database. So we keep track of everything in the tables to be able to track that information. The second, and consistent with how PDRI scores are calculated today, is we have to take into consideration 0 elements for each of those PDRI sessions. So when we look at being able to come up with an average score within a portfolio, regardless of the level, we take into consideration the total number of projects that scored an element. So if it was 0 or not applicable at a certain project, that's fully taken into consideration when we do normalization calculations.
Thanks, Sandra. The next question, how do you account for design activities that span front-end planning phases? This seems to be a gap as many activities mature through front-end planning 1 to 3, but the tool places them in one phase only.
Yeah, that's a good question, and we recognize that many organizations continue on to detailed design. I think the important thing to keep in mind is that it's not an expectation that every element needs to score a 1 or be completely defined at the end of front-end planning. The target is to get to a score of 200 or less. It's been my experience that you can actually have organizations that take design too far and end up with scores well under 100. And when they step back from that and look at kind of what they really want to be targeting, less design activities will get them a sufficient level of definition and a risk level they're comfortable proceeding to detailed design with. So I guess to summarize, focus on getting into the ideal range, not necessarily the lowest possible score.
Thanks, Sandra. How does this compare with the IPA FEL toolbox? Is Carve an add-on to the PDRI spreadsheet already available through CII?
Yep. So we recognize that there's alternate models out there to be able to look at scope definition and front-end planning. Carve is designed very much to be a way to get much more value out of PDRI and complement the existing spreadsheets that are available. So probably not enough time to do a comparison to a competitor's tool on this call, but if you'd like to have a follow-up discussion on that, whoever submitted that one, please just drop us a note and we'd be happy to follow up.
Can you provide an example of a practical use of the Carve tool for a generating power plant?
Sure. That's probably a really nice one for us to talk to, given we've got a number of clients in power generation here in Canada. We've seen Carve used to be able to work with mega project teams that are planning for multi-billion-dollar projects. And being able to look at the size of a team and front-end planning on that is a great way to think about how do I engage all my stakeholders, capture a lot of risk points that are going to span multiple projects that are part of a larger program. So we've used Carve to help communicate those findings in a program level assessment we did that included 4 projects. And the results of those action items, I think across the whole program, we found approximately 110 action items. Carve helped the client and the project director be able to track who those were assigned to and be able to manage that through to their next gate review.
Thanks, Sandra. How do you tie Carve results in with the company's risk management process?
Sure. So I think you take Carve aside, when we look at PDRI, it is probably the best risk management tool that's available to be able to kickstart your risk management process. In talking with a number of our colleagues in CII, the best implementation that we've seen of it is where all of your low definition elements in a PDRI session become a list that goes to your risk manager as part of their risk identification process. It doesn't necessarily matter who investigates those risks afterwards, but a recognition that if it was identified in the PDRI session, it should be investigated and determine if that should end up on your risk register. The other part that I think it complements the risk management process very well is when we look at PDRI 3 and we look at a handoff that's usually happening between different stakeholders. Being able to take those action items that remain at PDRI 3 stage, ensure that those are on a risk register if appropriate, if they haven't been in disposition, is a great way to make sure that whoever's responsible for the next phase has full awareness of the risk that they still have to have a response for.
Do you have trained PDRI facilitators on your staff?
Yes, we do. So we actually have worked through the certification process that rolled out from Arizona State University this year. So we have a team of certified PDRI facilitators that we work with clients across North America.
Do you have, with the 3 workshops that you listed, do those workshops involve the interactive use of Carve as well as the PDRI tools?
Yeah, so the maximizing capital spend through front-end planning, we ran the first of those workshops out in Calgary this fall, and had some great feedback from the attendees on that one. One of the things we're going to be adding to that particular workshop is this whole topic of fit for purpose. It seems to be one of the most burning issues that people have, and how do they address specific regulatory permitting requirements that their industry faces. So our hope is that by picking regionally focused workshops that we could start to address the issues in each of those particular regions. So PDRI is covered, fit for purpose is covered. We spend a good deal of time focusing on project alignment and the alignment thermometer tool. And we'll also be introducing the use of some of the tools that rolled out at the 2014 conference on interface management, and how do you start to make considerations on how to use CII tools to identify the best interface management strategy for your project in front-end planning.
Okay, and I had a question about essentially how is Carve deployed? So is it something that you have to access internally, or is it something that is just web available?
Sure. So Carve is an entirely web-based application, and we offer it as a cloud application for most clients. So it's hosted within the Amazon data center. So as secure of a cloud application is available today. We do have clients that have concerns about working with cloud-based applications, and if you fall in that category, then we also have an option to work through a site-deployed model of Carve.
Great, thanks. A couple more questions here. Do you have to do Carve in order to do the analysis that Dr. Safa was going through?
I guess that is kind of if we take a step back, the whole idea in being able to do that analysis is we simply have to get data in a normalized fashion. So get right down to category and element level data. So whether you use Carve or not isn't a limiting factor. We start with the PDRI spreadsheets, and we'll use the tool as part of our consulting, but it's not something you have to be using to take advantage of that service.
Great. And can a pricing structure be provided on request for the services that you've highlighted in the webinar?
Absolutely. We'd be happy to do that. Just encourage you to ping Mark with an email, and we'll follow up as quickly as we can.
And I guess further to that, how is your pricing set up?
I guess on the consulting services side, we do that on an engagement basis. And on the Carve side, we have that set up on a subscription basis, and we gear the pricing towards the two things, the number of projects that you're using PDRI for each year and the size of the capital program that you're using. So again, try and match a pricing structure that matches the amount of usage that you need